A little bit.
All right,
I that might be. Hold on.
that's actually my place. My
Wait,
AC
no.
is jacked
Did it
up.
just stop?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, because it was.
Hey, yeah, we should be good. Hey guys, welcome to the Superhero Cuts podcast. It's your boy Stevie Hayes, joined by Comic Cuts. Today, obviously, it's not normal that we're recording on a Saturday, right? We usually don't do that, but we want to start recording on Saturdays when movies come out, so we can, kind of cover the spoiler review, get through it, and then move on to the next thing. Because there's just so many projects that are coming out. Like Loki's going to be coming out soon. We're going to take up majority of our time, and so many other projects that are coming out, even Secret Invasion. So we want to really get this, be very diligent on what we're doing. Comic Cuts, how are you, bro?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Everybody, welcome to the best comic book movie podcast in America, in the world. Here it is. You might not think it. We do. I hope you do. We're trying to put this content out for you guys. Obviously, we've been getting banger movie after banger movie right now, and we thought, what better way to cover it than not have it take up the episode when we do it on Tuesdays and kind of get it to you earlier on Saturdays. So that's why we're here. We hope you start joining us live. We love when you comment. We want to know what you think. That's most important for us to talk about it. We want to know what you guys think about these movies. And then we want to discuss it with you. And as always, if you join us in the comments, we will, we're happy to throw you a link to come on and discuss it with us.
Exactly. So obviously we're going to be giving our spoiler review on Across the Spiderverse. So I'll start with this my overall review. The movie is perfect. I mean, there's not the movie is perfect. I have one critique, and I have only one critique from the movie. But other than that, when I watched it, I was locked in the whole time. And I actually went yesterday to go see it again because it felt like it was so much to cover and watch that I had it was so much to take in that I was like, you know what, let me just go back and rewatch it just because it was so much in one movie. How was your first reaction to seeing it?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I feel the same way and I haven't gotten to see it again yet. I'm definitely going again this week. It was like you said, there was so much to take in, especially in that third act. That third act was, could be the top third act of all time. That was insane.
I agree. It was so crazy just watching just everything kind of happen because obviously they've been talking about it for years now, but to see it happen live action was crazy. Okay, so we're going to talk about the positives and some of the things that's interesting about it, but then we're going to talk about our negatives if we have any. Do you have any critiques? Don't give them
No,
yet, but just saying, do you have any?
no, I really don't. I think there's
Okay.
one common one, and I don't really think it's a fair critique.
Yeah.
And I'll get into that.
Yeah, mine's more preference based, but we'll get into it. Okay, so first off, I want to talk about the multiverse because I think that is probably the most important thing right now is that Spider-Man has given us another layer of how the multiverse works. Okay, so the thing that hit me, bro, was this whole idea of the canon moment, right? So what if in the MCU right now, from what the TVA believes, the way that the multiverse works, what if Kang is lying to them? Like, like, what if it isn't a matter of timelines being wrong? Like, what if it doesn't matter if there's a bunch of branch timelines, but it's all about the canon, the moments that have to happen? So, I was thinking, right? Because even though, right, we have Thanos and by the way, just to let you guys know, our MCU is not the 616. We are the 199. Wait, is it 1999?
Uh, I think it is, but I want to add something to that. You have to keep in mind when you watch all of every Marvel movie and you play any Marvel game that, first of all, Into the Spider-Verse confirmed that these live action video game versions, comic versions, all exist within the same multiverse. That's number one. Number two, having said that, the comics are the 616 universe predominantly. Obviously, there are some differentiators with the Ultimate Universe, but being that the comics are the 616 universe, Gwen Stacy already, to throw out an example, Gwen Stacy died very early on in the 616 universe. Gwen Stacy also died in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So they can't then bring in Gwen Stacy.
Wait. Hold on. Wait. When you say 6116, are you saying like the actual comic books?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going. Just had to make sure.
So when Gwen Stacy dies in the 616 universe, in the night Gwen Stacy died, they can't then make a movie and say and bring in Gwen Stacy into that movie and say this is also the 616 universe, because Gwen Stacy's already dead in the 616 universe. And being that the comics have been going on for so long, there's so many limitations in what they could do with movies that the MCU hasn't been the 616. Spiderverse movies haven't been 616. Nothing we've seen is really the 616 universe.
100% agree. 100% agree. And I think that's the first part that we will talk about the cliffhanger as well, because a lot of fans are mad about that, and I think that is the dumbest thing to be angry about. You guys are like, a lot of fans are pissing me off being mad at a cliffhanger because, okay, you know what? Let me just talk about it now. Okay, so here is the thing, right? When the Spider-Verse movie was first announced, and this is where I say a lot of people don't really follow news or even know what be happening, because when this was announced, they said that it was going to be a 2-part movie. It was never addressed as a one movie. Like, this was always a 2-part film. So I was expecting it to be a cliffhanger. And
Infinity War didn't end.
Infinity War did end in a cliffhanger, bro.
Massive cliffhanger.
Thanos snapped his fingers and everyone died and went away, bro. That is a cliffhanger because we don't know what was going to happen next. That is a cliffhanger, bro. But something was somewhat resolved, bro. Nothing was resolved. Thanos snapped his fingers and dipped.
No idea where they went, and they didn't come back till the end of Endgame. But hold on, I gotta say something about this cliffhanger complaint.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what? A movie can't end in a cliffhanger? Like, so what? And it's similar to what I was talking about the the Dark Knight trilogy. Like, this is a trilogy as in a unit. And like, I don't get how people are like, I really like the movie, but the cliffhanger. Like, arguably
the Dark Knight was even ended with a cliffhanger as well, because Batman basically just framed his own self to murder Harvey Dent. So I mean, I'm not mad they had what happened next, but it wasn't a satisfying clip. Bro, I thought it was pretty satisfying in my opinion. And the thing that got me, and I wanted to talk about this in end, but it's whatever. But the thing that got me about the ending is that I knew that it was going to end on a cliffhanger, but I honestly wasn't like prepared for it to end at that point. That's why I was so satisfied, because I wasn't expecting it to end there. I thought that there was going to be a little more movie room, but I'm like, I personally am happy that they left off where they were, because there's a lot in that scene right there, and so I'm happy that we're going to be resuming right there, in my opinion.
It's funny because towards like the end of the movie, I kept on thinking like, okay, this is the end, especially when Gwen Stacy was at Miles' house. Or Gwen Stacy was at her house, then she was at Miles' house, and then you saw, Miles in the Earth 42. Like, it kept on teasing you, and it was like, okay, there's no way there's anything after this. There's no way there's anything, and they just kept going and going and going. So I thought that was pretty cool, and there was, I think that each one of those scenes added to that cliffhanger effect. But
I agree. You
also have to remember that, and I think that this movie is going to have an impact on franchise movies, because cliffhangers sell tickets to the next one. And
this ending gives us more answers than in Infinity War, because literally Gwen Stacy got the whole old crew back together to go at the mouse. So we know what's going to happen. I mean, it isn't like it is the craziest cliffhanger of all time. Like it's like in Infinity War, we really didn't know how they were going to like finesse. Like we didn't know what they were going to do, how they were going to get the stones. Like with this, we all had an idea of what's going to happen, you know, already.
But I will say,
Me personally, I thought it would end with Prowler Miles pretending to be 1601 miles and escaping. Okay.
You know, I think that the next movie beyond the Spider-Verse is going to be like I do think that they're going to level up in the next one in the same way that they leveled up in this one from Into the Spider-Verse. And I think they're going to do that by utilizing their villains. There are so many more villains that got introduced in this movie. You have the Spot, you have 2099 Spider-Man, you have Miles Prowler, you have Miles Prowler's Uncle Aaron. So right there, you already have 4 villains who are pretty formidable. You know, the Spot was kind of like soft in the beginning of the movie, but towards the end of the movie, he kind of like came into his own. And obviously, Miles Prowler is going to be savage. Like, he really went through it, and he, instead of, using that to become a hero, he kind of went to the dark side, so to speak. So, yeah, I do think that the next one is going to up the ante again, and I think that that's going to be done predominantly with the amount of formidable villains. Because right now, we have at least 4 of them, and I wouldn't be surprised if we meet other villains from other universes in the next movie.
Yeah, and just to answer what you just said about me personally, I would have preferred that both movies be in one, bro. That takes away from the movie watching experience, bro. Like Endgame and Infinity War wouldn't have been as hype as it was if we didn't have that year-long wait time, bro. Like that's what makes being a movie watcher worth it when you have a 2-part film. Because, bro, and as I'm not here to slash Zack Snyder at all. I'm not here to do that. But this is what happens when you're so used to watching 4 hours and 3-hour cuts, is that we sometimes get used to seeing everything at once, but there are some projects to where like bro, like Spider-Man was so much content to put in one movie that if they did a double cut, like I would have been overwhelmed. Like, I'll be honest. I would have been super overwhelmed.
So I sat next to like a group of kids, and they were fine the whole movie. They're probably like 15, 16. But the second the credits rolled, the first thing they all said to themselves was like, "What?" That felt like it was an hour long. Like, so I do think that the movie, even though it was almost 2.5 hours, it felt very short.
It did feel fast.
It went really fast because the entire movie was filled with so much content. It wasn't like that they made it 2 hours and 20 minutes for the sake of making a long movie, because that's what's popular right now.
Exactly, bro. And like, if they did a 5-hour cut, then everyone would have been saying, "Bro, this is just too much. It's too long." You know what I mean? And so I think that what they did with this is perfect, because the anticipation right now is at an all-time high, and part 2 is going to complete this saga, and most likely is going to put Miles Morales in the live action universe, most likely. But hold on, but I do want to get back to the whole universe situation, because I do want to just break this down for you guys so you guys can just understand what is going on. The way that Spider-Man 1099 explained the way that the multiverse works is that it doesn't really matter what's going on in the said branch timeline, as long as the canon moments line up with each other. So as you saw, right? Exactly. It did get confirmed. Yep. And basically, so as they said, right, in every Spider-Man's universe, the captain of the police always dies, right? Andrew Garfield lost Gwen's dad, and then and they showed us how it has that whole line of the same situation happening, and we even got to see that in Doctor Strange, how just like how we dealt with in our timeline, the 1999 with Infinity War Thanos, the 838 universe also had Thanos. So the one thing that is connecting these timelines is the idea of canon moments. And what happens is when you change the canon moment, that's when the timeline will destroy itself. Very interesting. And I think that this also is, and I'm making a video on this trying to like write out the thoughts, but and comments, give me your thoughts on this out of this as well. I think this is going to really give us something. I think we're going to see more of this with Loki and the MCU, because I do have a question about, is Kang did Kang lie to the TVA about this whole prune timeline thing? Does the timeline actually prune itself or not? I think that there's a lot that we can I think there's some blank parts in there, and I even think that there's a possibility that Kang could be having a part in why Spider-Man 1099 is doing all of these things.
So yeah, I listen, I think it's very interesting, and I would love to see, so I think it's inevitable that when we see Beyond the Spider-Verse, that movie is going to end with Miles being brought into live action, and they're going to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to make everyone go crazy about Beyond the Spider-Verse. Everyone's going to go see Beyond the Spider-Verse. But you know what else it's going to do? It's going to confirm that when the Miles Morales live action Spider-Man MCU movie drops, that movie will do $1 billion. They want to make each one of these movies help sell tickets for the next one. And what better way to do that than with one of the most ambitious Marvel moves of all time, cross over your mega franchise Spider-Verse animated movies that you made Miles Morales a movie superstar with into live action MCU, and there's, I'm telling you right now, when Beyond the Spider-Verse drops, the ending of that movie is going to feature whoever is playing the live action Miles Morales in the MCU. He is going to be in the end of the Beyond the Spider-Verse. Mark my words. I'm
exactly.
Right,
and also, bro, to answer your question, Tom Holland's canon moment was Aunt May dying, not Zendaya dying. And that confirms that when Andrew Garfield and Toby's Peter come together and talk about it, that was Tom's canon moment.
Yeah.
Like, because Uncle Ben didn't mean anything in his universe for a reason, because his canon moment is his Aunt May dying, because he viewed his Aunt May the way that Peter and that the two Peters viewed Uncle Ben. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand.
Great responsibility.
Yes. After seeing this movie, guys, you have to understand the MCU that we grew up with is not the original 616. There is a 616 out there somewhere where the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, every single Spider-Man, they all coexist together. We have yet to see that.
It's the comics.
But I believe that there's a live action Earth where all of these characters coexist, and I believe that is where we're going to end up at the end of all this Secret War stuff. And that's where I think we're going to start the new universe where everyone coexists in one. But I'm just telling you guys that, like, you guys have to understand, like, we have been watching for the past 14 years a different Earth. And I know that a lot of people get mad that stuff hasn't lined up with canon. There has been a reason behind that from the start. They're like, and this movie confirms every single second of that. Now, anyways, so now that we broke down the whole universe thing, now let's get into the actual movie, okay? So I want to talk about Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen, okay? Spider-Gwen is becoming one of my favorite characters in Marvel after this movie. I am actually happy that they made her a big focus on this film, and she wasn't just like the stronger mentor, but that they actually made the story about her as a person and as a hero in dealing with the identity of being Spider-Gwen.
Yeah. And, even when they introduced her into the Spider-Verse, like, she came in with the rock music, she was badass. And, this movie, like, a lot of the really deep emotional moments came from her relationship with her father. And I think that they really cemented her as, like, it's almost just, this movie was almost as much about Gwen as it was about Miles.
I agree. I would say it was equally about Gwen and
Yeah,
Miles.
yeah,
Now obviously towards the end it started to focus on Miles, but you could argue that the first half of the film was really focused on Gwen.
yeah.
Um,
You didn't even see Miles until like 20 minutes into the movie.
yeah, it was like five. It was like yeah, it was like 15 minutes until
Yeah,
we saw Miles, and I was totally fine with it.
yeah,
It fit perfectly. Yeah, I think Gwen was amazing. Now, I know I do want to touch on Miles. This is going to probably be a like 20-minute conversation about Miles Morales. I just want to say this: Peter was our Spider-Man. Miles Morales is the Spider-Man for Gen Z, and this movie defies that. As I said, I do think that Peter has a lot to him, and I believe that Tom Holland is doing a great job of showing us that. I do think that Miles Morales is giving you a whole different side of Spider-Man, and I think that I feel like Miles Morales in this movie relates to a lot of kids because he has two parents.
yeah.
Peter
And
Parker never had like a real mom and dad, and
right,
so and I think that this teenager dynamic that we're seeing is kind of what is touching like the masses in such a big way and why people want to see this film.
yeah. And this movie and the first one, I always felt like they are true love letters to Spider-Man comics. These movies are like watching a comic book on screen. It's incredible how they do it. And you know, they have me more interested in checking out the Miles Morales comics now. And when, the Spider-Man Miles Morales game dropped for PS5, I remember when I was playing that, I was thinking, wow, it's more fun to play as Miles than it is to play as Peter Parker because Miles has the electric venom. He could go invisible. And I agree with Stevie in terms of this kid being like the perfect Gen Z superhero to look up to from everything with the Jordans, the two parents, uh, you know, Brooklyn, like this kid has got it all. And you know, I also love that for those of you who know who Brian Bendis is one of the greatest Marvel comic writers of all time. Uh, Brian Bendis wrote the iconic Ultimate Spider-Man series. And at the end of the Ultimate Spider-Man series, Peter Parker died. And they did an Ultimate Fallout, which for those of you who are into comics, you already know, how valuable this comic has become. But they introduced Miles Morales, and Brian Bendis created Miles Morales in the wake of Peter Parker's death. And, they really hooked him up. I mean, in the first movie, when Miles Morales was flipping through his phone contacts, Brian Bendis was in his contacts. And I'm not sure about the first movie, but I saw in the credits on this one, Brian Bendis was an executive producer. So I just love how they're giving Brian Bendis, the credit that he deserves, and not just saying, "Oh, thank you to Brian Bendis." Like this guy was the executive producer. He created the perfect hero for Gen Z, and the guy deserves all the credit in the world. Having said that, also like, you know, Miles Morales is like a smart kid. He wants to do smart things. So there's a lot of similarities between Miles and Peter. But they made Miles a little more fitting for, the youth of today.
Yeah, exactly. Like Peter today is just not as relatable as he used to be for us. Like I know when I was a kid, I felt like Peter was super relatable for me. Like when I was like 12 to 13. And then when I got Tom Holland's Spider-Man, I'm like, yo, this is like the most relatable Spider-Man I've ever gotten. I feel like Miles does that for the kids of now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So what's also interesting is, Miles and his parents and Peter not having his parents, but Peter, has also been through so much with the comics. And nowadays, like a lot of Spider-Man comic fans and this kind of shows the disconnect between Spider-Man fans and Spider-Man nowadays in terms of the comics. Like, people are complaining that Peter Parker's never happy. Peter Parker isn't with MJ anymore. MJ's married in the new comics to another man. And it just shows that, like, and don't get me wrong, I have my issues with the current Spider-Man comics too. But to say, oh, Peter Parker's not happy or Peter Parker should be with MJ, like, you do not understand Spider-Man. The whole point, and that's another thing this movie touched on. Being Spider-Man is a sacrifice. They literally said that in this movie. Peter Parker doesn't get to be with the girl of his dreams, MJ. Peter Parker doesn't always get to be happy, because with great power comes great responsibility, and that responsibility has to be prioritized over everything else. And if it isn't, you're putting the people close to you, at risk. And it's just insane to me that, like, every month when the new Spider-Man comics drop, people on Twitter are losing their minds. Oh, Peter Parker's not happy. Peter Parker should be with MJ. Like, yo, if you're that big of a fan and you don't understand Peter Parker and Spider-Man by now, like, there's something wrong with your head. Like, seriously.
Peter's, like, Peter is a lot like Batman, right? Batman built his own Bat family, but we all know that in the end, Batman always ends up alone. Like that, that's just how that's just what the price that comes with it. The same way how in Avengers, if Infinity War, we saw that Tony finally got what he wanted, a family. He's out of the game. But what happened? He had to sacrifice his life and die. And when he said that he wasn't going to die, he sacrificed his own kid. I mean, he sacrificed his own fatherly life to save the world. That's and that is the cost of every single hero.
It's hero journey 101.
Yes.
Like,
exactly. Exactly. I mean, Superman should have been lost Lois, but that's a topic for. I mean, Lois does die eventually, and like that's just the reality of, like, comic book, just superhero fandom, is that there's always gonna be a sacrifice. And just a spoiler alert for you guys, Miles' dad is going to die. I don't, like, for all you people that think that he's going to save his dad. No, his dad is going to die, and Miles is going to be living in a single parent home.
And by the way, that should be unknown, because even if you don't read the comics, like, you've probably played the game or heard about the game. Miles Morales, his father dies. It's going to happen, and it's going to be really sad.
Yeah, but I already cried in this one, so I know I'm only bawling my eyes out when this happens. But yeah, and so, like, and people got to understand that, like, Miles is learning like that, because he's only been Spider-Man for a year. Like, he hasn't really been doing this thing for long. So Miles is going to learn that, to be a hero, it isn't just and I think the whole idea of this movie was that being Spider-Man isn't just fun and solving little mini crimes. No, like, people have to die for you to be living in your purpose. And I think that was the main idea of what this movie is trying to teach Miles. Now, I want to address this comment. Something about the Spider-Verse films I noticed is that it's really taking the saying anyone can be under the mask, taking it to heart, because before now we only knew of Peter, at least in the public eye. And now we have so much diversity in Spider-Man, which is more relatable to everyone. I say this movie isn't woke in any ways, but it's a love movie to the fans and characters. Okay, so I really don't like speaking about woke stuff, because we always get flat, like, just, algorithm stuff. But I will say that, as I said, this movie is not trying to push any agenda.
Yeah,
the movie is just literally about the content, and that's what I love about just the Spider-Verse film. In the same breath, I do think it's hilarious how Sony makes these masterpiece movies, but then we get movies like Venom.
I know.
It's so funny how they can just hit everything on the nose, but when they freaking do, like, a live action Venom movie or Morbius, we just get this garbage.
But I like the Venom movies. I understand why people have a problem with the second one, but the first one was great.
But there's levels. But like, there's levels. Like you can't make arguably a top 10 greatest superhero film of all time, and then you make Venom.
Same people that made Infinity War and made Multiverse of Madness.
The Russos weren't on Multiverse of Madness.
That's true. That is true.
Marcus and Steven Marcus and Steven didn't write for it.
But Sam Raimi, who made Spider-Man 2, also made Multiverse of Madness.
And how was Spider-Man 3? You're only as great as your last job, bro. Spider-Man 3 was mid. You know what I mean? At best. Sony Marvel movies are the same as DC. I agree. I agree. DC animated movies slap every single one.
Yeah.
I actually just watched the new Supergirl movie like I think like a month ago, and it was phenomenal. Man, DC animated movies are great, but as I said, I do believe in James Gunn, so I
Yeah,
will say
but the
that.
thing, the thing about the DC animated universe, and don't get me wrong, I love them. I'm a huge fan of them. This the Into the Spider-Verse movies are a completely different cloth than the DC animated movies. The DC animated movies, first of all, are like an hour and 20 minutes. They're not made for theatrical release, and the bar on the Spider-Verse movies is that much higher. Don't get me wrong, when it comes to like the animated movies that Marvel makes that aren't theatrical release, no one even talks about them. And the
I
DC
watch him though.
yeah, but like it's you have Flashpoint Paradox, you have Batman and Son. I mean, the list goes on. They're all incredible. Very few of them aren't amazing, but like this Into the Spider-Verse thing is crazy, and
Exactly.
like there was no agenda with this movie. It was a great movie. Nothing they did wasn't inspired by the comics. And by the way, like that's what movies should be. That's what movies should be.
And all right, so now that we done now, and then I do want to touch on Miles a little bit more. Now let's talk about just you know number one, Miles' suit was amazing. I love the suit.
Oh,
It was
fire!
sick. It was sick as heck. I loved it. I also I also was very thrown off by what Spider-Man 1099 told him about how the spider that bit Miles was supposed to be on was from Earth 42, which is where the evil Miles is from. So I'm really confused on how all of that works. So did the evil Miles make this spider? I have a lot of questions in regards to the whole Miles Morales Spider-Man situation. How did that spider get to Miles Morales' Earth?
Yeah, that I have no idea.
There's a
Um,
lot of questions like in that area because like it seems like Miles, the Prowler Miles, was like knew that it was him from the other universe. And I think that they're going to try to do some type of blood transfusion to give him the powers of Spider-Man. That's what kind of my theory is going to, something like that at least. But yeah, it's very interesting to see like how they're going to do it. I don't really think Prowler Miles is evil. He might be a hero in a way, anti-hero. Yeah, I could maybe say that. Kamikaze, how do you feel about that? The Prowler Miles being evil but a hero.
you know, listen, I kind of got those Gotham vibes too. But Prowler Miles, dude, they made him look evil as hell. I mean, listen, that could be a pump fake. We really didn't get to know him, but like they definitely made him feel like he had a serious vengeance for our Miles.
Yep. Not to mention when he said our dad, he said your dad.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
kind of shows that he wants smoke. And I think that and something has to do with the spider because he blames Miles for this. And you could tell that. And I think 1099, there's a reason why 1099 didn't like I think he knows where Miles is. I don't think that they think that he's on, this on his original Earth. Like there's definitely more to the story with that. But other than that, man, I think Miles was great. Miles legit cooked like over 200 different Spider-Man, which was also very interesting to see. Um,
I, by
I
the way, loved Spider-Man 2099's suit. I love the oversized gun.
hold on. We let's not hit that yet. Let's not hit it yet because I feel like he's going to be
Yeah,
another like 20-minute
right,
segment
right,
because he was amazing.
amazing.
Even though I have a pet peeve with him though. But yeah, all in all, as I said, Miles is great per usual. It's I love that we're seeing Miles Morales comfortable in his powers now. It's not like the starter Miles, kind of like what we saw in the beginning. So yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah. It, also a lot of growth for Miles. Like in the first movie, most of the time he wasn't sure of himself. He didn't really come into his powers until the end. And this entire movie, like, he was brave. He had bravado. He went for it. He took a lot of bold risks, even when everything was stacked against him. So that was really cool. A lot of character development there. And, there was just so much going on that I don't know if everyone caught that.
I agree. By the way, Prowler Miles was shown in the same scene where Spot talked about it, either his backstory or what he was going to do to Miles.
Well,
Interesting.
Spot, like, that's the other thing. So I think, and maybe this was shown and I missed it, but Spot, was an Alchemax employee that felt like he was screwed over, which, by the way, we've seen stuff like that in so many comic books.
The usual Oscorp special.
Yeah, but he also, I think he like merged somehow with Miles' graffiti that he did with his uncle Aaron in the beginning of Into the Spiderverse.
I agree.
And I think it was kind of like shown or hinted at.
If you search up the scene, slow it down. I know exactly. Yeah, bro. It's wild. It's wild how that was a dope visual, by the way. Also, I also love the visual, like just the way that the animation was, because when you watch like the movie, the way that their animation worked is that they only put detail and focus on the characters and whatever items and surroundings the characters were using. So like when you're watching Gwen talk to her dad when she finally gets like kicked back into her earth, if you take a look at the house, the whole house is like blank. Like you can tell that there's no detail, but there's detail on them two talking and like the stove, because they're going near the stove. Like, it's a very interesting, and I think that animation style was kind of like training, because your mind is legit like gravitating to where the focus is at, and you're not really worrying about like other things around it. So, and like, I've kind of felt like at first that animation was not going to work, but it actually helps you focus a little more on the film versus when you're watching a live action, you're trying to really look out for other things happening, because you're like, like someone could be behind you, in front of you. But with this, you're just focused on the scene. So it was very interesting. But yeah, man, Miles is great. I love Miles, man. Miles was really good. Okay, so now let's hit Spider-Man 2099, man. I think I've been calling him 1099 on accident, so I apologize. But yeah, so Spider-Man 2099. Comic Cuts, you go first.
Yeah.
How'd you like him?
I thought he was so menacing. I mean, it was pretty obvious from the trailer that he was going to be the main villain. But when they brought it as in, he was obviously an anomaly also. He explained what anomalies were. And, I loved how when he was explaining what anomalies were, like, he didn't really say right away that Miles was an anomaly, but like they kind of let the audience put that together, which you got to appreciate movies that respect the audience's intelligence and don't yell out every little detail. I think that's important.
Like The Dark Knight?
No, not like The Dark Knight. But anyway, this movie, like 2099, was so menacing. They made him look so vicious. The oversized gauntlets was probably my favorite detail on any of the suits in this movie and the last one. It made him look just so much more vicious. And like, they also didn't really touch on the fact that he wasn't bit by a spider, but in the comics, that's kind of the case. And you do see him, injecting like that green fluid into his body. For those of you that don't read the comics, that is like the way he gets his powers. He was never bit, which I think is going to be touched on in the next movie with Prowler Miles. I think Sam JRS was talking about in the comments, because Miles, in the universe that our Miles went to in the end, Prowler Miles obviously wasn't bit by the spider. He's upset about it. He wants the powers. So I think he's going to try to do what Spider-Man 2099 has done, figure out a way to inject the fluid to get the Spider-Man powers. What Prowler Miles probably doesn't know is that if it is going to work, you don't just do it one time. You have to continuously do it, as we've seen with Spider-Man 2099. What I also really liked about Spider-Man 2099 was that Miles' crew from the first movie, we had no idea that they were part of this, Spider Society, and that they knew all of this behind the scenes. And, Spider-Man 2099, he kind of like stacked everything against Miles and went out to get him. And, it kind of made Gwen and Peter B. Parker look evil for a second. Obviously, towards the end of the movie, they did the right thing, or are trying to do the right thing. But I loved how Spider-Man 2099 was kind of like the head of the canon movement. And similar to what Stevie was talking about before, Spider-Man 2099 has a lot of similarities to Kang the Conqueror in the MCU. And I thought that was really cool. And I hope we get that kind of crossover in the future.
I agree. I think that I agree with everything that was said. So in the comics, he's a vampire.
Yeah.
That is stupid. That is the dumbest plot point I've ever heard of in my entire life of being a human being. I thought the vampire thing was a bit much. It was even weird that he was about to literally suck the blood out of Vulture when they were in the air. I wasn't a big fan of that. But it's whatever. As I said, I did like Spider-Man 2099. But he's not. I wasn't a fan of the freaking vampire, so it just seemed kind of extra to me.
But he's not like a real like vampire. Like he doesn't suck on other people's blood. He just happens to have.
He legit was about to, bro. He legit was about to kill. He was either about to kill him or suck the blood out of him, and there's no explanation why, because he never did it again.
Yeah, in the film. I don't know what they're, but like he resembles a vampire with some things, but he's not like, you also have to remember in Spider-Man, there's Moreland, Morbius, like there are real vampires in the Spider-Man universe. So like, and there's a big difference between those characters and Spider-Man 2099. But I also think like it was also hinted at, like similar to what I was talking about before with the syringe with that fluid that he's injecting himself with, like he kind of wants that Spider-Man fluid. There's also like the totems, and that's like a whole other thing that, I mean, there's so much about Spider-Man and how they get their powers and different stories about that in the comics. I'm kind of blanking on it right now, but there's a really cool comic about is this guy Ezekiel, and he's got a lot of money and he's got the spider totem. And then Dan Slott did that in the Spiderverse story, which was about spider totems, and the totem is like the unit they get their powers from. It's really cool. So this movie kind of touched on that a bit with that, again, without yelling it out. So that was kind of a cool Easter egg for comic fans and those in the know of Spider-Man. But I do think that there is a lot of like tradition and backstory in how Spider-Man gets their powers, and Spider-Man get their powers. And I think that it's really interesting because there are so many different comics that have this kind of story, and that's obviously going to be a big part of Beyond the Spider-Verse. And because there are so many comics that touch on this, you don't really know which they're going to pull from.
I agree. As I think that there's just so much going on in this film, and with Spider-Man 2099, like aside from the vampire stuff that I hate, I do think that yeah. The suit, as you said, was super awesome. I love the long whatever it's called.
Gauntlet.
The gauntlet thing was dope. And just how massive he is and big, it just made him look BA. He looked awesome. Like he was just super cool. Like, you know what I mean? He was just like, yo, this guy's just BA. He's awesome. So I really like that. I like seeing the Scarlet Spider and all those other characters too. They also look super awesome. But seeing him as Yeah.
That was like I've always been a big fan of Ben Riley. For those of you who don't know who Ben Riley is, he is a clone of Peter Parker. If you look this up, there are most fans hate on the Clone Saga, but if you read it now, like the Clone Saga, they clone Peter Parker, and that's Ben Riley. He looked exactly like he did in the comics with the comic art with the blue sweatshirt with the ripped off sleeves. But if you read those comics today, they read a bit better than they probably did at the time because you could read them straight through rather than wait a month for each of the issues. And I think people hated the comic because people don't like when you mess with the continuity of Spider-Man. And when you tell people there's a clone of Spider-Man and you're not, and he's actually pretending he's Peter Parker, fans go crazy. So, but I actually am one of the few that really like that story.
Exactly. And people say that until we get people like Spider-Man 29.99 and Miles Morales, and then everyone's sold, So it was awesome seeing all these different characters. But yeah, I think Spider-Man 2099 is a very interesting character. I think he's playing good as the villain. I think he's going to turn back into the hero role because they're going to have to fight the Spot. Like that's the guy that they have to go after. And I think that Spider-Man 2099 is not understanding that the Spot is going to destroy Miles' Earth no matter what happens. Like,
yeah,
that's what I don't think he's understanding. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that's going to kind of come together. Spider-Man 2099, and I was writing up this theory that he might be the one to save Miles from the Earth that he's on now.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, like, even if Miles' dad dies, Miles still has to be there for the canon moment to happen.
Right.
So it's a very interesting story. So yeah, I'm just very interested to see like what's going to happen as the movie or as the news comes out of what's going to progress, because I'll be honest, there weren't many leaks with the Spider-Verse movie. They kind of kept everything pretty like close to the chin. Okay, so are there any other main characters that we didn't cover other than the main Gwen, Miles? Oh, you want to talk about the Spot?
I hope people realize that. So like while we were waiting for this movie, people freaked out that Spider-Man Unlimited was going to be in it, that PS4 Spider-Man was going to be in it, and I hope that I get it hypes up the movie, but like these characters were literally in the movie for a 2-second cameo, and I hope that when people are hyping up the next one that they're not freaking out over 2-second cameos and that they're freaking out over the cliffhanger and what's going to happen next.
Well, you know who's going to be in the next one. Me and you both know. The big three.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They got to be.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be a part of the final battle. I think that they might be the one to put Spider-Man 2099 to rest, bro. I think they're going to be with Miles, like the whole crew.
That would be crazy,
dude. I would pee myself if that happened.
I actually disagree. I'll tell you why. I think that they're going to introduce the live action Miles, and I think that that's what they're going to want everyone talking about. And if you put the big three into that movie, you take some of the spotlight away from the live action Miles introduction.
They're going to be in it for sure, though. They're definitely going to be in it somehow. And I think there's going to be a big final battle where all the Spider-Men are going to just pull up. Like maybe there's no way that you do Across the Spider-Verse and you don't have them in it. Like it's common sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I also think that to sell the live action Miles, you want the spotlight on that. And I think that's the priority.
There's also multiple Marvel crossovers or canon, for example, Silver Surfer. I think we're very far from DC cameos. I'll be honest with you. James Gunn is trying to build his thing. I don't think we'll ever see that in my opinion. That's just too much. It take like a lot of people think that it is easy to pull off that. There's a lot of legal action that has to take place for, and a lot of people have to sign off for a cameo to happen, like a Transformers and Fast and Furious or a Marvel and DC. Like, there's a lot that goes into that.
Like, you have to remember that these movies get have to pay for marketing. They also have box office revenue, and to work out how you split that between DC and Marvel and all that, like based on if it's a cameo, if it's a full split, like there's so many hoops to jump through for something like that to happen that I don't think it will ever happen.
Exactly. And plus, DC is a terribly ran company at the moment, so Marvel don't want no parts of that. They're getting better, but they are terribly ran. And so, yeah, man. What were we just talking about? Oh yeah. I want to talk about Spot. I just want to talk about Spot.
Yeah.
How'd you like Spot, bro?
Loved him. He was first of all, I think he's a really cool looking villain. Like I love the white and black, and I also think that the white and black suit was like aesthetically, he was the perfect choice for the villain because there's so much color in these movies that the monochromatic, like white and black, it makes him stand out so much that I think it was the perfect choice aesthetically. I love the character development from and that's what, like I said before, these movies are like a love letter to Spider-Man, and he is such a classic Spider-Man villain story. He was working for Alchemax. Something went wrong for him. He was like a low-level employee. He got screwed over. He's angry about it, and now he became a supervillain. Like that is so Spider-Man. So I love the Spot. Love the character development. I think the suit works perfectly within the Spiderverse universe, and against all the color. Great decisions all around.
Yeah, and Sony has done I would say like the Spider-Verse team, they're doing a great job because he really got sidelined for this movie a lot. And I like that they have fans thinking that the main villain is going to be Spider-Man 2099 because it's not. Spot is the main villain of this story, and a lot of fans forget that about Spot. And so I believe that in this next movie, Spot is going to do a lot of things, and it's going to change the main focus to be like, okay, we have to stop this thing, not fight each other, And so and I also like how like they introduce Spot as just like a regular villain that doesn't matter. And as the movie goes on, his importance builds up more and more and more and more and more. Yeah. And honestly, I would love it would be fire if we got to see Spot in a Venom movie or in other Sony projects. He's that universal of a character, and he showed it in the film. Like I think Spot could do some major damage in the Spider-Man universe.
Oh yeah. I mean, his powers are so unique, and that's another thing. His powers are like so fitting for this multiversal trilogy, where they're going from universe to universe, and they could also go through one of the spots and end up at a totally different place.
I agree, and I like that about Spot. It reminds me of I think what's that show I used to watch? Danny Phantom, how he used to be able to go through this like portal and then he could go into all these different like dimensions and stuff. It's very interesting. So yeah, man, I love it, and I'm a big fan of this movie. My only con was just really the vampire thing. I wasn't really a big fan of that, but other than that, man, this movie's like picture perfect.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think the cliffhanger thing, like, by the way, for the fans that don't like it, I think that is going to become a bigger, I think it's going to become a lot bigger within the comic book movie genre because it gets people talking about the movie and it helps sell tickets.
Exactly. I mean, they're just copying the Infinity War Endgame equation, really. Like that was the formula for those two.
Yep.
When you're wrapping up a character, that's what you should do, a part 1 and a part 2. The same way Mission Impossible is doing a part 1 and a part 2. I mean, I think it's awesome when you do cliffhangers. So all in all, from me and Comic Cuts, this Marvel's been on a good run. We got Guardians of the Galaxy, now we're getting Spider-Verse, and then we're going to get Secret Invasion and Loki. We're going to have a good run for a little bit. So I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as... Huh?
We've been having a good run. We just saw The Flash. We saw Guardians 3. And
Yeah, superhero films are doing their thing right now. So let's just enjoy what we have because I can't wait till we talk Tuesday because I am actually getting excited for Agatha now.
I'm not.
I'm sold on it. I'm starting to get sold on it. So I'm going to be breaking that down to you, Comic Cuts, so I can hear so I can try to change your mind on that. But there's hope. There's definitely hope. And so yeah, man. All in all, we love this movie. We don't really we don't have any problems. This movie's perfect. This is the perfect animated film.
Yeah. It's one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time.
Exactly. I'm not gonna say it's the best because I can't. I can't say that,
So
but it is. Yeah, there's a lot of good Spider-Man movies, and for the people who are saying let me just say this, bro. For the people who say stuff like that, when it comes to like Spider-Man, that's a very disingenuous comment to say. Just saying.
I agree.
Now, when it comes to DC, we can say that because DC hasn't really had any good films that have been like Avengers level good, like what the Flash is. Like the Flash is another level of good. So, but this movie is another level of good, and it's one of the best Marvel films of all time. And we're going to be talking about this film for the next decade.
By the way, you know what the hottest thing is in comic book movies right now? It's the multiverse, and we're going to be seeing that much more of it. It's big in DC, it's big in Marvel, it's the hottest topic, and we haven't even like scratched the surface of the multiverse movies that we're going to be seeing.
Exactly. And I don't and this movie is showing us that fans aren't tired. Fans aren't tired of the multiverse. They just want to be explained on how it works.
Yeah. And like don't use it as a gimmick. Like it was a gimmick in Multiverse of Madness. You know, this was not the case.
Stop it. Yeah, it was not a gimmick, bro.
They went to a couple different universes and like barely touched on it. You know, yeah, there was the one scene where, you know,
America Chavez was the problem, bro.
No, they needed more multiverse in that movie. It was like there was like
no. I'm saying Doctor Strange could have done everything he wanted to do. With you could have taken America Chavez out of the movie, and the movie would have been just fine. In my opinion,
I think it would have helped.
Yeah, she had too much of a place, or just kind of like put her to the side for the movie. Like, don't make her the center. Anyways, time for another day. But yeah. So Spiderverse is a W. You need to go see it. If you haven't, go see it now. You won't regret watching it. But thank you guys for watching and listening. As we always say, right? Please like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you know when we post. We're going to be recording Tuesday per usual. But have a wonderful day. Peace out.